I was a young man waiting for the birth of our firstborn son when the planes crashed into the towers on 9/11. This was a pivotal moment in my life, especially when we learned that the incident could have been prevented, saving thousands of lives, not to mention the lives in Afghanistan and Iraq, if only the U.S. government had been competent. I learned a hard lesson. I cannot count on my government to protect my family, so it was my duty to defend them. As someone who leaned left politically at the time, you can imagine that this was a big adjustment to my outlook on life. Events since then have only compounded the lesson I learned back in 2001. We are all on our own. I can give you many examples of this in the last 20 years, but recent examples are numerous and powerful and instructive all on their own. Let's take the one that really rams the point home, the coronavirus pandemic. If ever there was an incident that proved we are all on our own, it was the pandemic, where the bureaucrats and bleeding hearts plastered signs everywhere saying, "We're all in it together." They said this because they wanted to erect totalitarianism upon us all, but they didn't want us to put up a fight. But just like with 9/11, when the facts rolled in, we learned that the whole incident could have been prevented. This time, not just saving thousands of lives, but millions. It has been known since the beginning of the pandemic that the coronavirus was already running rampant in China in the fall and winter of 2019, months before it became the nightmare of March 2020. Did you know that? As I speak, the mainstream media and the government bureaucrats are finally saying out loud what we already knew, that the coronavirus was almost certainly, quote, leaked from the Wuhan bioweapons lab. This is huge in itself because obviously it is only a generous assumption that it was, quote, leaked. It could just as easily have been deployed intentionally. This goes to my point in this video. The fact that it has taken this long for our government to acknowledge basic facts known for years, and the fact that it cannot state definitively that it was only a lab leak and not something worse, say an act of war, begs the question, what the hell are we paying for? What is our government using all of our tax dollars for? It is going into debt to the tune of trillions of dollars each year, and we can't even get for our money intelligence services and agencies that are monitoring friggin' bioweapons labs in China well enough to spot an outbreak in time to take defensive measures? And that's what I mean when I say we are on our own. Your government can't stop terrorists from killing thousands using airplanes. It can't detect pandemics breaking out in a country that has been our most formidable enemy for more than a decade. It can't stop this same enemy from flying God knows what over our airspace. It can't stop trains from derailing left and right, contaminating entire regions. There is the additional point that once it does take action, it does so in almost all the wrong ways. These dumbasses always go first for the rights and liberties of Americans themselves before blundering on into further incompetencies. So they effed up Iraq and Afghanistan, sure. But first they launched a surveillance state in the US with the Patriot Act and maintain to this day an endless and ongoing, quote, war on terror, end quote, which by definition never ends and allows for unending infringements on our rights, the rights of American citizens. You know, because it's war and all. After failing to detect the coronavirus, they naturally turn to, you guessed it, locking Americans in their homes, destroying businesses, and sending infected old people into nursing homes, knowing full well that the most vulnerable of all are the old people. What a bunch of assholes. And naturally, they haven't done a thing to hold China accountable. Indeed, the mainstream media and the left went all in to make sure that the person who is the most compromised by China, a certain Joe Biden, became the occupant of the White House. Meanwhile, there is no relief for the folks in East Palestine, even though their region has been devastated by a veritable American Chernobyl. The EPA says it's safe there, which begs the question, if it's safe to release huge amounts of toxic chemicals into the sky and rivers, why do we need the EPA at all, out there harping on businesses and communities for minute amounts of chemicals, barely even detectable? Certainly in comparison to what happened at East Palestine. All of these examples and more go to show that we are all on our own. Your family's safety depends on you. Your government will not protect you, whether because it is compromised or stuffed with incompetent bureaucrats. They couldn't find their own ass if they had a third hand. You are on your own. But the reality is, anyone who sets out to protect their family quickly realizes that the job is in fact too big for any one person to do, even if they were rich. That's why what we need fast are parallel economies. We need to plug into our local communities and prepare for the inevitable fact that the safety and welfare of our own community depends on what that community does. Businesses need to rely on local businesses. The community is all on its own. The list of things that need to be done, if you conclude, as I have, that we are all on our own, is long and full of hard things. But ironically, it does mean that there is a sense in which we all need to be in it together. In it for self-sufficiency, in it for liberty, in it to stand against tyranny, in it to feed each other and come to each other's aid, because you know the government sure as hell isn't going to do it. On this channel, I dive into all of this and more. We need parallel economies, yes, but we also need philosopher kings, people who are masters of their own destiny, people who know how to think and are brave enough to act, and people who are prepared to link up with other philosopher kings to protect their families before it is too late. We are all censored, disarmed, or worse. Join me. I am the Philosopher King 2.0, and I have spoken. Like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, and if you think my perspective is valuable and needed, I urge you to share this video with like-minded people while you still can.